So that was a movie. We
Yep.
are here to discuss the new Scream, which is called Scream because it's new and completely different than anything else we've ever seen, and not a fifth movie in a series, even though it is.
Right.
Yeah. So Trevor and Christian, what did you think of Scream?
I liked it. I was saying this earlier. Last month we had Spider-Man: No Way Home, and I felt like that was a movie for everyone. And I felt like before I even entered the theater, I was like, Scream, this one's for me.
Yeah.
I felt seen during that movie. Like they knew what I wanted and they gave it to me for 2 hours. It was just wonderful.
I agree. I loved it the entire time, from the beginning to the opening kill to the last kill. I was having a great time. It was very fun.
Yeah, I genuinely thought it was an amazing experience. As a Scream movie, I'm not going to sit here and act like it's like 10 out of 10, greatest thing I've ever seen, blah, blah, blah. But in terms of what you want from a Scream movie, like, what could you possibly want from Scream 5?
Exactly.
Like, it was that.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, from start to finish, you're like, freaking out about like, oh my goodness, it's this person, oh my goodness, it's that person, oh my goodness, they're gonna do this thing from the other one, or what the fuck, that's how they killed that person, or that's how they killed this random bullshit, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, just like, and little subtle things where there was like a certain thing that they did in terms of one of the kills, in terms of the way they went about the kill, where, like, y'all might correct me, but like, if I'm wrong, but there was one kill where I'm like, this is Scream 5, and they took that long to do this kill, and you all might know what kill I'm talking about, but like, it seems very obvious in terms of like how meta Scream gets, and then like, so maybe they done that kill before, but when it happened, I was like, they took till Scream 5 to do that awesome way to kill somebody in a Scream movie.
I think that's what's so fun about it, is when you're watching it, you're like, wow, I didn't know that there were still this many ideas, and it's still this fresh, even while they're redoing some of the ideas that they've already done.
Exactly. Like, each Scream movie follows a formula, It's like a bunch of pretty people getting murdered, but there's also ideas and commentaries about horror movies and movies in general, and, the last one was 11 years ago. This one, or before that, Scream 3 was 11 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Give me another one in 11 years. As long as you got the ideas, I'm there. Like,
give me one in 3 or 4.
Exactly. But that's the thing, though. Like, it kind of needed to be this amount of time because the way that movies have gone since Scream 4, and this, like, the ideas in this movie are so smart. Like, I thought that it was just going to be, like, I always enjoyed the whodunit aspect of it, but it was, considering I didn't know what I was going into, I really enjoyed what I went into, because it felt new,
Like how you were saying, like, how movies, like, change in some sort of big way, and especially related to, like, this specific genre, how, like, it might take a certain time for something so drastic enough to make another Scream movie.
Exactly.
Like, and I do agree with that, because it's like from Scream 4 until now, you're kind of like, before the new Halloween movie came out, you're kind of like, there's nothing really new to add. Like, they've already made fun of like reboots and blah blah blah, and then the Halloween thing came out, and you're like, oh shit, that's a new aspect that they have that they can play around with, and
bring in the former generation,
and like the fact that you're making fun of and kind of commentating on that allows you to bring back Courtney Cox, Neve Campbell, and David Arquette without making it seem like these old ass people just coming back in and just showing their faces and just trying to get me excited for a Scream. It makes perfect sense.
It really does.
As a Scream movie, it's not like some obvious cash cow thing. It's because they took 11 years to make it. If it was an obvious cash cow, they would have done Scream 4. I don't know how much it did at the box office, but like they would have probably put one out in 4 or 5 years, and it'd be like, oh, they're making another Scream movie, like how they make fun of Stab, where it's like, oh, they were on like 9, 10.
That's the good thing about this movie. At least they're still so meta enough where they explain their plot structure and why it's that.
Exactly.
And everything. Like in all these movies, they're like, this is crazy. You know why it's crazy? This is why. And it's because we're crazy.
We'll tell you.
It's it's so cool that in the 26 years since the original, they've built this universe. Like, beginning with
it
Scream
is kind of like
2.
a whole universe.
It is. Like, you got the Stab, like everybody's aware of Stab, and even I'll point this out, one of the Easter eggs in it, they're looking at the IMDb for Stab, and Jennifer Jolie is listed as Gail Weathers, and that was Parker Posey's character in Scream 3. And it's like, that's just awesome. Great. I know that. I know. Awesome. It's a world.
And while you mentioned that, the opening scene, like, obviously it's very important in the Scream franchise, and this opening scene is pretty much perfect in terms of what you can ask for Scream 5. Like, as soon as it started and got going, and you know what a Scream opening is going to be, and especially the way that they pitch this as like a requel kind of thing, it is very reminiscent of the first Scream, but in a way where it's like it's not, it doesn't come off as hackneyed where you're like, oh yeah, I knew they were going to do this, they were going through emotions, this could have been a YouTube skit. It just comes off as genuine creative writing.
Most of it was in the trailer, and I was still surprised.
Me too. Like when the trailer came out, everybody was like, why are they showing so much of the trailer? And then I was like, that's the first kill!
I know, that's how it was opening.
But it's like, there's no way that's not the first, the opening. But like, at the same time, and it didn't ruin the opening at all, because it didn't, like, the trailer didn't get into like the route that who was going to call or how it was going to come across.
That movie was very suspenseful.
Yeah,
it was.
Because when it happens, you're not even sure, like, if that's the scene, which you know going in that there's going to be an opening scene like that, but when it starts, you're honestly not even really sure the route that they end up taking, even though it is fairly obvious. I'm not going to act like it's rocket science and it's like a super surprise, because it's pretty much the first scene, but like it kind of does that a little surprise, because you think they're like tricking you at first. And
the surprise of the whole the whole movie is like just watching it when you're in theaters is a completely different vibe than watching it on your couch.
It's true,
and for the first time, mind you. Like watching it for the first time on your couch could be great because it's like, but when we were all in the theaters, I felt like a general presence of tension.
Yes, exactly. This was, I've been watching these movies most of my life. And this was the first one I've gotten to see in a theater, and I will say, like, as soon as the opening, as we were in the middle of it, I knew where I was going. I was like, oh my god. I was like, oh wow. Like, I've never seen this before, and I'm actually concerned. Like, it does provide, like, an immediate, like, anxiety. Especially because, like, those movies are so good with the way that they, like, with the jump scares, and, you never know who's gonna get it. But you also kind of do, like, as it's in the middle of it. But that's part of the fun. I don't know. It's...
In the Scream movies, all the violence is very sudden and with a piano uptick. And so you're usually like, oh! And you're always on the lookout. And then so, like, when we were all watching it in the theater, and you only know half the characters, and it still doesn't even matter because they do such a good job of still building tension onto the people that you don't know anything about. And the whole time you're wondering, are they the killer?
Exactly.
Yeah, literally every character in the movie at one point, your dumb brain will be like, that person killed everyone? That person killed their friend? That person killed their mom? Or that person killed whoever the hell is in the damn movie? Like, you're like, why did that person do that? And obviously, there can only be one killer, but also, sometimes there can be more than one killer.
Sure.
But you never know. Then that's kind of the point, because every time a character comes up, and then part of you is like, well, maybe everyone's the killer. Like, like at a certain point.
Maybe they're all in on it.
Right, and then there's a lot of scenes where a character will, like, either actually admit or, like, jokingly admit that they're the killer, and then literally every damn time you're like, oh my gosh, she's about to kill someone. And like, you don't even question it. And, like, you think the fact that they do it so often, it makes you're like, okay, chill the hell out. But they play, like, such a good suspense with it, like you all are saying, where you're genuinely, like, you feel it. And especially with the theater, like Trevor was saying, that it really does feel like a movie that you should see in the theater if you can. But it was like a cathartic experience, and that's kind of like something like Spider-Man No Way Home is that to people.
Very
and Scream is not going to make Spider-Man No Way Home money.
No.
But, like, at the same time, I feel like this is the kind of movie that is. And it also kind of... But at the same time, it does do that stuff with the... They discuss a certain movie franchise that is not related to Scream or horror movies, which kind of you could also kind of look at in a new light because of Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah.
Because Spider-Man No Way Home comes out and does something that's very much different than this other franchise and its decisions that it makes and how much uproar it got and how absolutely ridiculous the discussion around that movie
Oh yeah, a
is.
Scream movie is nothing if not self-aware of itself. The entire time it's watching, it's like, we're doing this. Isn't this insane? Isn't this cliche? And it's like, it's so cliche, it's double cliche, and it's not even cliche anymore. And it's like, that's what's so fun about those movies, because everyone that watches those movies and is in those movies loves horror movies, has seen all these horror movies, and has studied them all, and knows all the rules, and knows like how these things go. And so then the whole point of watching is like, how are you gonna outwit the person that's watching, like the person that made it? How are you gonna still be ahead of them and figure out the killer? And also, how are all these people trying to figure out the killer at the same time? And you're like, hey, I'm just like them.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way that their fandom always comes into play in these movies, and the fact that it just keeps growing, like the fact that fandom can mean so many different things.
Yeah, since the second one.
Right.
Yeah.
And like especially now, especially with the other franchise that they tackle. And at first, when they started doing this, I was kind of like, this might be a little on the nose, but as it builds on, and especially once it builds to the finale, where like obviously a Scream movie has a scene where there's a motive being discussed, blah blah blah. This is still a franchise, no matter, even if they don't want to include the number next to the. This is a franchise. We've seen plenty of Scream movies, and they do joke about that. But once they get into this other franchise, and which kind of became college student film discussion at that time period of the life. And while like Scream 2 literally has that scene where they're learning,
where everyone's in a classroom talking about
movies, and they're talking about sequels because it was Scream 2, and that was their time to talk about a sequel, and they could just get into discourse about the sequel's never better, and then they go on and on about this and that. But yeah, the way they kind of build up to the motive and actually describe it and get into it, you feel it's honest, and you feel like it's not just kind of like, oh, well, we have to do this because this is popular, but it works in the Scream universe and actually makes sense as what a character's motive would do, and it's not just kind of made up just to say, hey, we had to throw this in because that's popular nowadays.
That was the good thing about it, is when you're watching, you're like, you're trying to wonder, you're like, is this gonna feel earned? Is it gonna like work?
Right.
And then like inevitably, I mean, we've already said we liked it, so yeah, it did work. It worked for me.
It worked for me too, and I'll say so Wes Craven directed the first 4. He died of brain cancer, I think, in 2015. It was, and obviously it's new writers, new directors. I think it's the same directors as Ready or Not.
Yeah.
And you could tell that they took the time. They knew, they got every detail, pretty much, and that's the thing. So it's named Scream, and so you think they're gonna do Halloween, where it just kind of erases every sequel or something, but they don't. No, this is made by people who love these other movies, appreciate them, and there's lore. It's smart with the way that it deals with the Scream lore, and of course just the subject nature of each of these movies. It's just it works.
I think part of how you said that they don't discard any of the sequels or anything like that, any movies that came before. I think part of why that makes so much sense for them not to just be like, oh, we're going to make fun of it by disregarding these other movies and acting like they don't exist. That's how we're going to make fun of it? No. Because Scream, part of the great aspect of Scream is it's a movie that's taking place, but while it's a movie taking place, it's also commentating on the franchise that is occurring in the real world. Yeah. And so if you erase Scream 2 or Scream 3, then you take away the real events that are occurring in this world, and it would just make it too weird and confusing. But they work with it in that way to where they can still play around with it while taking, hey, we made Scream 1, we made Scream 2, we made Scream 3, we made Scream 4. All that stuff matters.
Yeah,
we made it.
Exactly. And well, here's the thing, and I may be in the minority here. I like every Scream movie. The only one that you could debate, in my opinion, as bad is the third one. And that's the thing. Why would you erase 3 or 2
Right.
other movies that aren't even bad. Like, a lot of these horror movies, they fly off the rails come like 2 or 3. I think they're
Or
all
5.
Or 5, exactly. We're in the 5th movie, and they're firing on all cylinders. Really, it's good.
And it kind of works out because because of that, you don't have to just be like, well, that one sucked, so we probably should get rid of it if we can.
Mm-hmm.
But like, because like
Write it
Halloween
out or anything.
right? Just anything, and they could write it off as like, oh, that was clever because we're also making fun of the movies that do that. But they don't because they don't have to.
They don't
And they don't have to lazily do that and cover it up with like, oh well, it makes sense because we're kind of mocking these other franchises that are actually doing it. So it kind of works very well in that sense. I'm very glad that it all worked out in terms of.
They all feel proud of each other. Like when you're watching it, it's like they don't feel ashamed of like any of their sequels.
Right. They don't. Yeah. There's no like. There's no like obvious joke where it's like, well, that one sucked.
Yeah.
Or, like they look at the camera where it's like, oh, that character from that one, yeah, that guy was stupid. Or,
He deserved it.
Yeah,
It makes me think of that scene in X-Men Apocalypse when they're like, oh, the third one's always the worst.
Yeah, when they're walking.
But like, I mean, like they could have done that this time, but they didn't.
There is kind of a thing where
with the
they like joke where it's like, oh, by the 5th one it got crazy. But at the same time, it's like that's fine because you're literally making the 5th one.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
you're not commentating on the past one. You're like, oh yeah, that one that we know people didn't really like. That was stupid. We admit that. But like as you're making the 5th one, you're just kind of it's a throwaway joke. They don't make a big deal of it, but they're just like, oh, by the 5th one it gets crazy, and they don't look into the camera like a bunch of assholes and be like, we wrote this, aren't we smart? No, it's like. It's just a casual comment that somebody makes, like in a YouTube video, where it's off screen. So it's like it's nothing that like screams in your face where it's like, we know what we're writing. It's like it all comes off like as a genuine thing. Like I've kind of been saying with all these various things, it comes off to where it actually works in the movie's universe, where it builds on that. And while it's metatextualizing everything and making commentary on all this and that, it juggles all that into an actual movie. It doesn't just come across as a couple of douchebags in a writer's room being like,
we got Scream!
I've watched Scream, we're making the new Scream. Yeah, we're going to keep this going because, we need money. But it comes across as like a Scream movie. Like the movies are made for money. Yeah, duh. This movie also was made for money. But the way it comes across, it's visualized and comes together. It all feels genuine, and it works in that world. It works in like an actors and producers and directors coming together to do this kind of way too. It doesn't feel cynical. When at this point, based on all the cynical stuff that keeps coming out, it kind of would be easy to just be like, oh yeah, they're making another Scream. Wahoo!
There's so many of those movies that like were franchises. It feels like whenever you're watching them, they're like, oh, remember when there was those old movies that sucked?
Yeah, it's
these are all great.
Yeah. Like, this one is better. We fixed the issues.
There's just something more if you respect the ones that came before, and then you build off of those, like what you're saying. There's so much more to it. That's why it feels like a whole universe, and it's not fragmented.
And a lot of the narrative of the movie is a discussion of fandom, and that kind of comes across like brilliantly, and like what you said, and how it all just. I don't know. I thought it was really well done, and.
Do we want to get into any spoilers at all? Do we want to have any sort of a spoiler talk?
We could.
Yeah, I mean, it's
far enough in the video now.
Yeah, I think we're probably about halfway. It feels like in the back of my brain.
So consider this a spoiler warning, and if you haven't seen it, you should see it. And if you haven't seen it, which considering it just came out today,
what are you doing?
Yeah, go. You got time. It's 10:30. You got time.
Run to the theater. But if you give a shit at all about Scream, like, don't just sit there and be like, well, I want to watch them talk about it. Like, genuinely, like, if you want that experience in the theater where you are genuinely, like, confused and wondering what's going on, start to finish, like we all seem to have, like a visceral thing, then just pause the video and come back to it. And, like, every stupid channel says that, but I honestly just don't want to deprive you of it.
I've done it.
Right, yeah.
Go
So
in
I've done it
fresh.
plenty of times. I've done it plenty of times. Before the new James Bond movie came out, I was listening to The Big Picture, and they were making like a big deal about, oh, but this is a spoiler warning, and please do not keep going because we will spoil stuff, and you do not want any of this spoiled. And at first I was like, I don't know, I've been reading some stuff about this movie, and I don't know if it's going to go this way or that way. I kind of really want to know about it, but at the same time, I ended up just chilling out, listening to them, because they did make a sort of big deal about it like this, and just waited. And then I came back to it after watching the movie, and I'm very glad I did. I don't know what anybody else thought about the new James Bond movie, but I freaking loved it.
Remember when I told you there was like 3 big spoilers in it? I meant it.
Yeah, because I texted Christian to make sure, because I was like, I really want to keep listening to them talk, because I like these people and I want to hear what they think, but like, I was like, am I doing myself wrong by asking?
5.
And then, yeah.
I think I did say 5, and I meant
something. I don't know. But
yeah,
like,
I mean,
you made it very obvious that it's like, no, definitely don't. And so I trusted Christian, and so
the magic of watching it the first time without
Right.
knowing without knowing how it ends it's something you only get once.
and you won't get that back. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's stop bullshitting about stupid stuff like that, and let's get to this crazy stuff that happens in this movie.
Hopefully you've tuned out. Tune out now.